Steven and I are getting a divorce. A little boy suddenly tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, I finally found you. I looked down. Oh boy, isn't this a mini version of me? Next thing I know, Steven's angry voice rings out. Stella, how dare you have someone else's kid behind my back? You're dead. No divorce. Come on. If we don't get divorced, how am I supposed to have fun with my brothers? I quickly chased after him. It's not true. Let me explain. I was about to go after Steven to explain. But the little boy clung to my leg, crying and refusing to let me leave. I couldn't do anything else but call Steven. Before I could even say a word, Steven's cold, shaking voice said, You want a divorce to be with your lover's family? No way. Stella, no one tricks me. You violated the agreement. Get ready for judgment. The call ended. I was speechless. Judgment? Does he think he's God or something? But seriously, what's up with this kid popping up out of nowhere? I looked down at the little boy again. He was looking up at me, tears in his eyes. Seeing that I wasn't happy, he squeezed his eyes shut and hugged my leg even tighter. People around were trying to calm me down. The kid is innocent, don't take it out on him. Own up to your mistakes. Either ask your husband for forgiveness or ask for a divorce. I grabbed the little boy by his collar and took off. I tossed him onto the car seat. I glared at him. Kid, you're messing things up for me. Believe me, do it again and I'll spank you. The boy pouted and drew back a little. Mommy, don't be mad. I gave up. Alright, threatening a kid doesn't suit me anyway. I started the car. Alright, if you won't tell me, I'll take you to the police. They can send you home. The boy grinned. Mommy's home is my home. I was losing it. Stop calling me mommy. Though I've been married to Steven for 3 years, we've been totally innocent, never did anything. Miss Stella, the paternity test confirms that Mickey is your biological son with a 99.9% match. Please take your child home. I sat in my car, looking from the test report to Mickey's face. Finally, I glanced at my reflection. A pretty good likeness. The nose, eyes, mouth, and ears. It's like we're cut from the same mold. But I swear, I've never even touched a guy, let alone have a memory of being pregnant or giving birth. So how did this kid appear? Where have you been living? Who raised you? The boy looked at me and shook his head. Turns out, he didn't know anything. Steven called, sounding icy cold. Bring the child back. I'm waiting for you at home. Steven sat on the couch, expressionless and intense. Even in the 90-degree weather, I felt a chill. Mickey and I stood in front of him, his icy stare sweeping over us mercilessly. Every sweep seemed to drop the room's temperature by a degree. Mickey seemed terrified, hiding behind me, his little hands trembling. With no other option, I summoned the courage to speak. Steven, My voice trembled more. The kid is innocent. I resigned myself to my fate and closed my eyes, feeling ridiculous. Come on, I have the paternity test in hand. No wonder I'm guilty. But I'm the victim. I didn't do anything, yet I'm stuck with this disaster. It's beyond explanation. Steven clicked his tongue and looked at me disdainfully. So you're admitting it? I was on the verge of tears. Can I not admit it? I whimpered. Steven's face turned dark immediately. Stella, do you have a death wish? After much coaxing, I got Steven to let Mickey go to my room. Now, with just the two of us in the living room, I sniffed and put on a pitiful face. Though, to be fair, my situation was pretty pitiful. We've been married 3 years. You know what kind of person I am, right? Steven scoffed. Keeping a man on the side? Or spending money on handsome live streamers? Or drooling over guys on TikTok? I felt embarrassed. Those are lies. I've got the will but not the guts. It's all wholesome. Steven continued his cold laugh. A clean relationship and now a kid old enough to find you. What do you want? I was about to lose my cool. I might be a rich family's daughter, but Stephen's family was long associated with mine. He wouldn't actually kill me, right? My sudden defiance made Stephen squint. He stood up, slowly walking toward me. His tall figure exuded a commanding aura. I tried telling myself not to be scared, but my body didn't listen. I backed up until my legs hit the coffee table. Nowhere else to go. Stephen raised a hand. Terrified, I shut my eyes, shouting, don't hit me. Stephen didn't hit me, probably because he's above hitting a woman. But he said, seeing as both our families got along, he'd give me a chance. If I say I'm innocent, then I need to prove it. Time frame, 1 month. If I couldn't prove it in a month, he'd tell my parents and demand compensation from my family for his losses. My parents are righteous people. If they found out I had a son during marriage with God knows who, they'd surely kill me. Besides, if this came out, it'd be embarrassing for the whole family. I couldn't let that happen. And about our marriage, it's an inescapable family alliance. A lot of business depends on it, no way around it. Eventually, we agreed on a 3-year marriage contract. Once that's up, we divorce, satisfying both families. The only condition was to not have kids with anyone else during the marriage. I was the one who added that rule, worried Stephen might stray, so even after a divorce, no one would badmouth me behind my back. In the end, it was a good deal for both of us. But who would have thought I'd end up having a kid first? I really didn't want to admit it, though. Stephen hardly ever came home. But lately, he's been showing up a lot. Every time he saw me, he'd be cold, with a face that said I'm watching you. As if scared I might run off, he occasionally needed to check up on me. Although he's incredibly handsome, the most handsome guy I've seen, his cold stares killed any mood to admire him. But with him coming home so often, it did have one perk, I managed to sneak some of his hair. I planned to take Mickey for another DNA test. This time for Stephen and Mickey. Maybe I've read too many online novels. If the storyline goes the typical way, it's gotta be Stephen who's the dad, no doubt. I'm totally sure of it. I haven't lived with any man under the same roof besides my dad and Stephen. But life's no novel. When I got the test results nervously excited, the last page said Mickey and Stephen have no blood relation. I was beside myself and got a paternity test for Mickey and me again. The result was the same. Mickey is definitely my son. Can someone explain this to me? Who's Mickey's dad then? I need to find out what happened. I decided to hire a private investigator. As I was browsing websites, my landline rang. I heard Mickey crying hysterically, "Mommy, where are you? Dad is really mean." The line cut off. I called back but couldn't reach them. I had to call Stephen. "What did you do to my son?" Stephen seemed ticked off by my tone, laughed coldly, and hung up. In those few seconds, Mickey's crying didn't stop. Forget the private investigator, I rushed home. Bursting through the door, I yelled, "Stephen, you have an issue, take it out on me. Picking on a kid isn't manly." Stephen, sitting coolly on the sofa, glanced at me, completely unbothered. I stormed over, still shouting, "Did you hear me? Stop ignoring like you're mute." Stephen shot me a frosty look. "Stella, you're being bold." I grabbed his collar and got in close, blurting out something weird. "Women are naturally weak, but become strong as mothers. You dare touch my son, I'd kill you first." Stephen's face darkened. "So you're admitting it?" I went silent instantly, my brain blank. Then, I did something crazy. I kissed Stephen. Closing my eyes and steeling myself, I kissed him hard, pressing him onto the sofa, cupping his face. No room for snarky comments. Afraid he'd push me away, I used all my strength. Stephen was stunned, but seemed angrier at my sudden move. He pulled me into an embrace, then spun us over, pinning me onto the sofa. It was easy for him to switch roles and get more intense. I couldn't speak, just gasping for air. Almost passing out, I heard Mickey crying, "Bad daddy, let mommy go." Reflexively, I clung to Steven, pleading, "Steven, don't hurt him. Take it out on me." My voice, softened by the kiss, carried a hint of seduction even I didn't intend. I felt Steven tense up, something shifted. After a moment, he chuckled, amused, "Stella, do you really think I'd hit women or kids?" My mouth worked faster than my brain. Then why was my son crying? Steven stood, cold and indifferent. "Take your son and leave." I didn't get kicked out. The deed's in my name from when we married. I could make Steven leave anytime, but didn't dare. Cheating while married and having a big kid brought guilt, keeping me in check. I needed to tiptoe around this god. "He's not your dad, don't call him that," I gently told Mickey while cleaning his face. "Steven gets irritated seeing you. Calling him dad just makes it worse." Mickey pouted, "Then what do I call him?" "Uncle, big brother, anything but dad," I sighed. "Stay away from him." "Why were you crying today?" Mickey's eyes welled up. "I wanted to play with paper planes, so I took some paper from the study." Dad got mad. "What kind of paper?" I asked, dreading the answer. Mickey's description turned my anger to a boiling point. It had to be Steven's contracts from his study. I had never been allowed in there. This kid. But faced with Mickey's pitiful look, I couldn't scold. I just told him to never touch Steven's stuff, especially not in the study. After settling Mickey with some toys, I made a cup of coffee by hand. Knocking on Steven's study door, I nervously said, "I need to talk to you." "Come in." With a forced grin, I entered with the coffee. "Made you some coffee, tell me how it tastes." Setting it on his desk, I feigned rubbing my wrist, ground it myself, really hurt my hand. Steven remained focused on work, didn't even look up, get to the point. I coughed lightly, about Mickey crying. "I misunderstood you, sorry. I've talked to him, he knows he was wrong and won't repeat it." Silence. I couldn't read his mood, so I cautiously continued, "About Mickey's situation, I honestly have no idea. It's completely unintentional. But don't worry, I'm hiring a private investigator, we'll have answers soon." "How long?" Steven finally asked, turning to side-eye me. 15 days left in our 1-month agreement." "I'll work hard. I'll hurry." Inside, I was crestfallen. This coffee tasted even bitterer to me inside me. "Oh, coffee. Aren't you drinking?" I asked. "I'm afraid you poisoned it," Steven smirked disdainfully. Fuming, I took the coffee away. "I could definitely poison you if I wanted." "Fine, I'll drink it myself." 2 big gulps down, my face twisted at the bitterness, my insides bitter too. Bitter as can be. I got my best friend Susan to find a reliable private investigator. She assumed Steven was cheating, so she eagerly helped. The PI was named Ken, quite reputable. Susan said anyone with Ken on the case is set. Everything's figured out with him. Steven's actions, even in explicit detail. Ken assured me confidentiality even from Susan. Not that I doubted her, but she'd be too excited about my son to not pester Steven. Ken promised silence, more so than a corpse, he said. Then he vanished to dig up the truth. With nothing to do but wait, Steven's daily nagging became torture. "What if nothing's found?" Steven asked, all breezy. Compared to my decline, Steven, played victimized, was business as usual. "Do as you want if the truth never surfaces," I mumbled, giving up hope. Steven eyed me up and down with distaste, looking like death. "No meat on your bones, you'd fetch nothing at the market." I resisted the urge to punch him in the face, and forced a smile. "Yes, you're right." Just then, the landline rang. Steven picked up the receiver casually, and a sarcastic, amused smile appeared on his face. His slender fingers pressed the speaker button. A sharp, flamboyant voice blasted through. "Sis, I miss you. Why aren't you talking?" You haven't come to my live stream for ages. Did you fall for some other guy? You know I won't have it. I want you to be my top supporter forever. Come help me with the PK, player knockout, tonight. I've got a big surprise ready just for you. Only for you, nobody else. Did you hear me, sis? Hey. Sis, say something. Steven's smile grew deeper. I was totally petrified. My legs were trembling. Then I heard Steven speak, moving his lips slightly. Your dear sis heard everything. She'll be there on time. Huh? Who are you? What's a guy doing there? Hey, wait. The call ended. Steven looked at me, his lips curling slightly. Does that answer satisfy you? I wish to disappear. I'm doomed. How does this guy know my home landline number? It must be Susan who told him. 8 p.m. Under Steven's watchful eye, Mickey and I dragged ourselves into a certain male streamer's live room. The PK had already started a minute ago. Our side was clearly at a disadvantage. The streamer, Max, got excited the moment I showed up. Here's my beloved Rabbit. Rabbit, show them what we're made of. Hit M with the carnival rockets. Let's get the Rabbit Pride streaming, folks. Rabbit is my nickname. Regulars in the live room all knew me. They spammed the chat with Max and Rabbit forever. On a normal day, I'd be giggling with my tablet, happily tapping away to send gifts, satisfying my tiny vanity spree. But now, I just wanted to awkwardly dig into the ground, wishing the earth would swallow me whole. Rabbit. My one and only sis. My wealthy and memorable sis. Release your charm, make those ignorant dogs quake. I've never felt Max's voice to be so grating, so utterly discomforting. I looked at Steven with an almost crying expression, hoping he'd spare me. Instead, he pointed at the gift panel and said to Mickey, pick whichever you like, there are special effects. Steven, don't, I tried to speak, but his cold gaze shut me up. Mickey skeptically reached out a tiny hand and tapped on a small plane. A pink paper plane flew across the screen. Then he tapped on the fireworks. Fireworks exploded brightly on the screen. He got obsessed, tried out every gift, picking his favorite ones to spam repeatedly. Max's voice was about to blow up the tablet. I'd been generous before, but this level of wild gift-giving was a rarity across the entire live streaming scene. Sis. I love you, I love you. You're my treasure, my lucky charm. Rabbit, I'll kiss your feet, I'll do anything for you. I'll give you my life. The chat filled with, Rabbit, we love you crazy. Max quickly shot to the top of the live rankings. More and more people crowded in, all wanting to see who had this much swagger and wealth. Then, I spotted my friend Susan. Driving her flashy top-tier sports car, she made a grand entrance into the live room. With words across the screen, girl, throwing a divorce party here? Your husband's cheating and leaving with nothing? So all the property is yours now? Being single rocks, you can choose anyone you want. Karaoke tonight? I snatched the tablet and left the live room, escaping to my room. My money. I cried as I texted Susan, damn you, you set me up. Susan didn't call back, but Max did. I answered, and he was beyond thrilled, Rabbit, I'm crazy about you. As soon as this PK is over, I'm coming right over to see you. If I had a mirror, I'd probably see a twisted face, considering this was real money, my money. My heart ached, not so much the flesh. Plus, being frustrated these days, I felt like exploding. It was my kid messing around, he's only 3, you get me? His tone changed immediately, what do you mean? Are you messing with me? Make it clear, you're not thinking to request a refund claiming underage use, are you? Speak up. You mean it, don't you? If you're broke, don't pretend to be rich. Say something. Slut, your man's cheating, you feeling lonely at home? I didn't bother trading insults with Max. I just turned off my phone. As his #1 supporter for 2 years, I helped Max grow from an obscure streamer into one with millions of followers. But just one PK, and he turns hostile. Was he full of himself? Or was I an idiot, blind? I really said those 2 sentences just to test him. And as expected, people's hearts can't withstand probing. I'm genuinely exhausted by it all. But I didn't expect the worst news. The next morning, as soon as I opened my eyes, I saw Steven sitting by my bed, staring daggers. With even more devastating news. Chris showed up. Claiming he's Mickey's dad, here to reunite the family. And who the heck is Chris? He's the young guy I kept. Couldn't hold it in, I cursed, what the hell? Is he insane? Then I saw Steven open his phone, flashing messages and photos from Chris. All from Chris. Pictures of me at KTV holding him while drinking, along with videos of me wasted, acting crazy, calling him baby when drunk. Steven, You what? Steven's face looked murderous, his tone was icy. I immediately clung to his arm, panicking. I was set up, this is obviously a frame job. Steven sneered, the guys at the door, say it to his face? I stood firm, fine. Even though I kept Chris, nothing happened. Back then, Susan dragged me to an entertainment club. Insisted I pick someone. Plus, there were always group gatherings, including people I disliked, who inevitably compared and gossiped. Everyone showed up with their partners. And I didn't have anyone. Wouldn't that be embarrassing? So, that Chris guy was one of the 5 people Susan set me up with. I chose him because he looked a bit like Steven. But he seemed more obedient and well-behaved. When we were together, there was never any inappropriate behavior or conversation. He even helped me dodge drinks, which was really considerate. He would come whenever I called. But he never sought me out. It made everything really comfortable. But now, I never expected this guy would actually come to my door. Not only did he secretly provoke and taunt Steven on message, telling Steven to divorce me. Claiming we were the true love and Steven is the third wheel. He even said Mickey is our kid. Mickey is already 3, and I've only known Chris for a year, okay? You really never truly know someone. I couldn't help but think of that male streamer who turned his back on me last night. I really have a lousy eye for people. Who I think is good always turns out otherwise. Feeling annoyed, I got up, opened the door under Steven's cold gaze, and walked out of the room. After just a few steps, I stopped. I turned back around and hugged Steven all of a sudden. Just for a brief moment. Afraid he might push me away, I quickly spoke up. My voice muffled, my eyes slightly burning, and my body trembling a bit. I suddenly realized, even though Steven is always cold and distant like this emotionless, ascetic perfectionist. At least, he's real. He doesn't pretend or have ulterior motives with me. Everything I've used, worn, and spent all these years were his. Okay, thanks. Just a little hug, and that's it. I quickly let him go, turned around, and walked downstairs without looking back. I'm gonna confront Chris. I have to clear my name. And after this, I won't talk to those people again or trust anyone so easily ever again. I won't let myself be fooled. Stella, are you out of your mind? Chris was just standing in the living room, tall and casually dressed. He's just a clean and bright young guy, with a sunny smile that left a good impression on me. I always thought if Steven were 10 or 8 years younger, he'd look like this. But at this moment, my anger outweighed the appreciation for his looks. I marched right up to him, glaring coldly. What nonsense are you spewing here? What I didn't expect was that despite my anger, Chris just smiled slightly, his tone calm and gentle as always. Haven't seen you in a while, just wanted to see how you are. I was stunned. Thinking back. Since Mickey appeared, I really haven't been in the mood to attend any gatherings. But then I quickly remembered how he acted behind my back with Steven. Anger flared up again. Cut the crap. What's your motive behind those weirdo messages to my husband? And now claiming to be my son's dad? You want to take us away and reunite? What's your deal, huh? I haven't treated you unfairly. Why do this to me? Why? I admit, I was pretty emotional. All these things, I just couldn't control my emotions or temper. I genuinely felt like losing it. Just losing it. Chris seemed startled by me. His eyes complex as he looked at me for a bit, then apologized and left. I shouted at his retreating back, "Get lost. Don't ever let me see you again. Ever." Then I crouched down, curling up and cried loudly. It's hard. Really hard. I truly have no idea what's going on. Why did Mickey appear? Why do I suddenly have a son out of nowhere? I didn't know when Steven came over, but when I noticed, I was already kneeling on the floor, clinging to him and sobbing. He didn't say a word, just let me hold on. I couldn't see his face, didn't know how he felt. Once I cried enough and started calming down. In a hoarse voice, I told him, "Steven, I swear, there's nothing between me and him." Steven acknowledged with a hum, probably believed me. Then I said, "Let's get a divorce. I don't even know how to explain Mickey to you. If you want compensation or anything, just say it. I'll do my best to make it right. For my parents' sake, and for the history between our families, just take the high road, help me out, I'm begging you. I think I've given up hope and completely stopped fighting it. I just want to crumble and wait for the judgment. These days are too hard, I can't take another. I'm afraid I'll really go insane. My whole life, I've been pampered by my parents, and people were always kind to me because of my family. Susan always said I'm this naive little princess untested by the world. Growing up, I never faced anything this tough." Steven didn't respond. I was so tired, resting my head on his shoulder until I unknowingly fell asleep. When I woke up, Steven and Mickey were facing off by my bed. Even someone as clueless as me could sense the tension between them. Mickey was visibly upset, sitting cross-legged on my bed, arms folded, glaring at Steven. Steven was standing, brows furrowed, unlike his usual calm self. "Son," I muttered, my voice raspy. Mickey immediately turned around, his plump little face cutely earnest as he leaned towards me, big eyes filled with worry. "You're awake? Are you okay?" Using my hands, I propped myself up. My body leaned against the headboard. Mickey quickly handed me a glass of water, trying to appease me. "Drink some warm water, it'll help." I nodded, taking a few sips. He hurriedly took the cup back and placed it on the nightstand. Looking at him, I smiled warmly. "Having you is a blessing, son." "Yes. Even if I lose everything, I still have my son, right?" "He's small, but he seems understanding and well-behaved. I do quite like him." Before I finished my thought, Mickey suddenly burst into tears, kneeling on my bed, wailing, "I'm sorry, sister. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have lied to you, I'm sorry." My expression froze. Staring blankly at him, "You called me what?" Mickey pointed at Steven, sobbing, "It's him. It's all him. He told me to lie to sister. Boo-hoo, sister, I was wrong, don't be sick, don't be angry, I'm sorry, boo-hoo." I looked at Steven in disbelief. Steven's brows were furrowed even more than before. Looking at me, he seemed conflicted yet unsure. Finally, he said, "Stella, I'm sorry, I tricked you. Now I know the truth. Turns out, Mickey and I are related by blood because he's my little brother. He's the second child my parents had. When Steven and I got married, my mom was already pregnant. She was worried I wouldn't accept it, so she kept it a secret. She thought it might not sit well that she was having another child when I was already grown up. Plus, being on the older side to give birth, she was afraid of my strong disapproval. But she really wanted this baby. So, after the wedding with Steven, she went back to the family estate with my dad to secretly prepare for the baby. Meanwhile, Stephen was in charge of the business. He assured my parents at our wedding that he'd provide for me no matter what. But no one else knew that our marriage was just a contract. It was only supposed to last 3 years. Mickey coming over was a way for my parents, who wanted to travel abroad, to leave the baby with me and see how I'd react. Eventually, I had to meet my baby brother since Mickey is over 2 years old now. But my parents were too scared to contact me directly, so they reached out to Stephen. So, Stephen knew all along that I had a little brother. And on the day of our divorce, he and Mickey plotted together because he didn't want to divorce me. Also, the person I thought I was madly in love with was actually myself. And that guy I thought I was keeping was really his cousin. He had been abroad and only returned last year. No wonder he seemed so similar to Stephen. No wonder his eyes were filled with such complexity when he left yesterday. No wonder he was provoking Stephen through texts, and Stephen, a rather petty guy, never retaliated or mentioned anything to me. Stephen had all of this planned out. It made me laugh. Stella, I don't want to divorce you, let alone lose you. Everything I've done was for us. Leave, I cut him off, pointing at the door with a cold expression. Maybe it's because I was so calm, or maybe because I looked deadpan. I didn't explode or cry. I just wanted him to disappear like a stranger. Stephen moved his lips, and under my indifferent stare, he turned and left without saying a word. I closed my eyes, a mix of emotions swirling. I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. When I opened my eyes again, there was a glint of amusement and smugness. I high-fived Mickey silently. Yay! Exciting. The two of us giggled, covering our mouths. I already knew Mickey was my brother. When my parents kept avoiding me by staying in our hometown, I secretly visited them. I figured if they wanted to keep it a secret, I would play along. After all, parents have their pride. As for Chris, my friend had already told me he was Stephen's cousin. So, we went along with the ruse, and I kept him so I wouldn't have to find some unreliable person for show. As for the streamer Max, I did misjudge him, but I didn't really mind. I tipped him because he resembled Stephen. Since he turned on me, I filed a complaint. So, the huge tip I gave him was actually donated under Mickey's name to a charity. Concerning Stephen, I never planned to divorce him. He's good-looking, talented, capable, and treats me well. A husband like that is hard not to love. That arranged marriage back then took a lot of effort. I had been planning on him for a long time. Even if he and Mickey hadn't put on their little show, I would have done something to stop the divorce. Once I saw Mickey, I knew Stephen had something up his sleeve, and I just went with the flow to see what tricks Stephen had up his sleeve. I played the drama queen for a month. Stephen had more plans, but seeing me so miserable, he couldn't keep it up and conceded. With Mickey's support, I turned him to my side, helping me pull a prank on Stephen. Now, Stephen's probably a mix of emotions. As for his fate, it's still unknown. But I'm in no rush to reveal the truth. I spent a month devastated, so he should suffer a bit too. This also gives me a chance to enjoy what being courted feels like since Stephen never truly wooed me. Big sis, I'm starting to feel sorry for brother-in-law, Mickey said sadly. I flicked his forehead. Feel sorry for what? United as siblings, we're unbeatable. Mickey nodded eagerly. Let's conquer brother-in-law. Try another phrase. If he's gone, who'd take care of us? Mickey replied, let's win over brother-in-law. I chuckled. Alright, Stephen, bring it on. Stephen's epilogue. I've liked Stella since we were kids. Wanted to marry her, have kids with her, and treat her right for life. Our families are close, and we grew up together. But due to career developments, we saw each other less and less. I had to grow up quickly and take on family responsibilities to secure our future. Though we didn't keep in touch, I stayed updated on all things Stella. She's pure and adorable. The company was rising fast, and I planned to pursue Stella once things settled. But the one family spoke up first. I wasn't sure if it was her parents' wish or Stella's idea, so I hesitated at first. Eventually, I thought, why not get married first and figure it out later? So, the wedding was set. Stella asked to meet. She seemed nervous, and I, usually expressionless from my role as a leader, was also unexpectedly anxious with her. "Did you hear about the wedding?" she asked first. I gave a non-committal yeah. She seemed troubled. "My parents insisted I marry you. I'm their only daughter, and I can't change their minds. So, I'm here to ask if you're willing to marry me." I stayed silent, feeling disappointed. She was only doing it for her parents. "I know you have someone special, and though I don't know why you're not together, trust me, my agreeing to this has nothing to do with feelings for you. I won't bother you emotionally." I felt my heart sink again. All I could think about was that she didn't like me. So, does she not want to marry me in hopes I'll be the one to say no? I asked her, "What exactly are you trying to say?" She bit her lip cautiously and said, "I know your parents approved too, so I guess you're in the same spot as me." I came up with a plan. "Why don't we have a contractual marriage? We can get married, cover for each other, but live our own lives without interfering. 3 years, that's it. After 3 years, we can divorce saying it's due to irreconcilable differences. What do you think?" I was honestly shocked by her plan. I was silent for a while. I asked, "Miss Stella, do you have a boyfriend? Or is there someone you like?" She smiled shyly. "Honestly, no, I've never even dated." Finally, something satisfying to hear. I said, "All right, let's go with Miss Stella's plan." Her eyes lit up. She quickly pulled 2 printed agreements from her bag, gave me one, and handed me a pen. "All set, sign here." The agreement stated exactly what she just said. I picked up the pen and was about to sign when Stella suddenly stopped me. "Stephen, wait a second." My hand shook, thinking she might back out. "I think we should add one more clause, something good for both of us. During our marriage, we can each do our own thing, but absolutely no kids." She explained hastily, mainly because since we'll divorce later, having kids would be bad for our reputations and the child's. I realized her concern. She was basically worried about me having a child with someone else during the marriage, which would put her in a tough spot. But she's the one I love, so why not fulfill this little concern of hers? I nodded, "Okay." We happily signed and got married. After the wedding, she moved into my private villa, which was already in her name before we got married. We lived in the same house, but in separate rooms. Every time she saw me at home, she seemed a bit nervous. So she'd just hide in her room and not come out. I worried about her feeling uncomfortable, so I rarely stayed at the villa, spending most of my nights at the office instead. I was busy with work anyway, so I turned into a workaholic of sorts. Whenever I missed her, I'd go back and spend the night. That was satisfying enough. Time flew by, and we spent 3 years living as polite strangers. The time passed so quickly that as the agreement's end approached, I grew more restless. Especially knowing she liked watching handsome guys live stream, rewarded them, swiped through videos of handsome men, or went to karaoke with her girls and met male models. She often said things like, "Once I'm divorced, I'll do this and that." Always fantasizing about life after the divorce. I almost wanted to cut her off from the outside world. Every day I thought about ways to reasonably avoid divorce. Until her parents called me, asking to send Mickey over to stay, and I suddenly had an idea. Things went smoothly. Divorce plans were on hold. But seeing her unhappy, anxious, and irritated made me feel terrible. When she wasn't happy, Mickey wasn't either. He's always been worried his sister doesn't like him, so he tried hard to win her over by being obedient and keeping her company. Mickey deliberately took my contracts and folded paper airplanes to play with. He challenged me, saying he didn't want to continue. I ignored him. Then he cried in frustration and called Stella. I didn't expect it, but Stella kissed me. A scene I only dreamed about was happening in real life, and I kissed her back with the same determination. It was sweet. Beautiful. Happy. So much so that when the mail streamer called our home, I didn't get mad, I even agreed to something. I intentionally had Mickey reward him that way. To destroy one's life, first indulge them. I'd already investigated the streamer. He wasn't a good person. Thanks to money, he quickly turned nasty. Yep. Things progressed even better than expected. I then let Chris come over in hopes Stella would see the other side of people outside and not get easily fooled again. It might have been too much. She was in a bad mood and looked terrible. Chris didn't expect her to change so much in just under a month, so he left soon after. He texted me afterward, "If you keep this up, I fear you'll regret it." Truth is, I've already regretted it. But things have gone this far, and I'm kind of powerless. It's actually pretty funny. Usually, I've got a handle on everything, and I'm in control. Except when it comes to Stella, I end up like a helpless kid, unsure what to do. She cried on my shoulder. Asked for a divorce. Pleaded for me to let her go. I was so heartbroken I wanted to slap myself. When she fell asleep, Mickey said he was done pretending and wanted to confess. I said I didn't want to act anymore either. Being honest is fine because seeing your sister like this hurts more than anything else. Just tell her I forced you, she won't blame you. As for me, I've got no clue what's next for me. I bet my face showed a lot of emotion at that point. When Stella woke, Mickey and I confessed. She stayed calm, just didn't want to see me. I left feeling pretty dejected. Anxious. When she showed up in front of me again, I hadn't slept for 2 days straight. "When are we getting divorced?" That was the first thing she said. I answered, voice cracking with a plea, "Honey, can we not divorce?" She let out a sarcastic laugh. Probably laughing at my sudden terms of endearment, though I'd said it countless times in my head. "Steven," she said, "let's just part on good terms." At that moment, felt like my world was crashing down. Seeing her turn to leave, I rushed forward, hugging her from behind, knees hitting the floor as I pleaded, "Please, Stella, don't leave me. I know I messed up." At that moment, things like dignity, pride. I didn't care about any of that. The thought of her leaving my world made every cell in my body ache. She turned around, touched my head. "If you knew it would end like this, why did you start it?" I owned up, "I'm sorry." If sorry was enough, then. I didn't let her finish, stood up and pinned her against the door, and kissed her. Just like her first kiss on me. Passionate and fierce. I shut my eyes, too scared to see her face, tears streaming down. My first time crying. My first time losing my cool like that. "You bastard, Steven." She slapped me. Her hands gripped my collar, furious. "Hear me out, do that again, and I won't forgive you." "Are you a woman, crying like that?" My eyes opened wide, lost in thought. Do I even have a chance? But soon enough, I caught on. "Babe, you forgave me?" I was thrilled. She snorted softly, still flustered from the kiss. "Depends on your actions, you never even chased me, never said romantic things." Chase. Right away. "Babe, I love you. Love you so much. Loved you for years. Going to treat you right forever." Afterward, many called me president but laughed behind my back, saying I was a man being controlled by a woman. Who cares? It's not embarrassing to be my wife's suitor. I just love her.